Welcome to writing screenplays. Yeah, so I've got, so this is the collaboration between LitSoc and Woroni. Matthew here is the Woroni TV editor. We've got Sophie, who's the president of LitSoc, and we've also got Tasman, who is a very experienced actor, who
Hello.
and he is going to be sharing some of his experience with everyone. Matthew, do you want to start us off?
Brilliant. I'll take it away. So as you said, I'm the TV editor at Woroni for this semester. And Woroni in the past hasn't done a lot of scripted work, but we're really interested in doing more this semester. So that's something that we're hoping to do more call outs into the future, more collaborations with people, and really get that like scripted content being made at TV. So like one of the big things is we hope to maybe do a short mini series. It's been done before at Woroni a couple of years ago, but it's something that we're hoping to do again. And that will probably end up being like a whole year-long process. So if we did a call out, next week, that would be a whole year-long production because it really needs a lot of time for our team to get into the detail and really perfect the whole production process. So talking from sort of experience of what Woroni does with scripts, we mainly do 3 to 5 minute long videos. They're usually quite short. It's for social media. It goes up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, gets like the 1 minute teasers, and then also on the YouTube channel. So pretty much that means like if you do the classic 1 minute, 1 page rule for script writing, that's only 3 to 5 pages for a script. So there's not a lot of space in there to be really working on a lot of detail. You want to focus on something that's quite small, but still is able to like reach out. If you're doing a mini series, 3 episodes, that's 15 minutes in total. So again, there's not a lot of space. So that is like one of the challenges of writing for Woroni, but it's also really fun because you're able to sort of push yourself and really condense like the key information, the key message that you're trying to get across, whether it's a joke in a sketch or whether it's some sort of emotional hit that you want in a scripted piece. You really got to focus on just the essence, just the necessities that you need for the script, which, I like that. So on the side of the scripted stuff that we look for, it is both sketches, so it can be standalone sketches that we might do, and it can be more like, pilot episodes for a mini series. So there's sort of like both sides to it that you want. There's, any form of scripted piece. If it comes within that time frame, then we're happy to look at it, sort of thing. But then the other aspect that comes into it is your story needs to be like within reach for, a student production company to be able to do. So, that means that locations need to be available either on campus or somewhere local in Canberra. It means that the cast needs to be available pretty much through the student body because we are an ANU organisation. So we serve ANU students. So it needs to be, student actors. And it needs to be a story that's feasible without, extreme special effects, explosions, or something that would require such a high budget. It needs to be something that really can be quite a small production. So again, that sort of sets like the boundaries for the types of scripts or the, not types of scripts, but like the stories that we look for. It sort of sets the parameters, but then you can work anywhere inside that circle that we sort of lay out, but yeah, it needs to be something that's available. So that's one thing when you're like starting to work on ideas, starting to work on stories that you hope to be made, via Woroni. You want something that's small, that's available. And then we just provide sort of that extra bit of experience for production, and we provide the equipment, because that's usually the biggest barrier that we've found for students getting pieces made, is either having a team of people to do it with them or having the equipment to do it. And we have that. We have both of those. So that's where we can come in and really support the scripts to be made, is by providing a team, providing the equipment. So how we work with scripts, so we do a call out, say we do a call out, you know, next week, we get a couple of scripts in, myself, a couple other members of the team, we'll sit down and we read all of them because they're quite short. We have that time. So we can go through them, we can read them, we can discuss what do we feel is best in the image of Woroni and what ones have potential. And then they sort of get distributed out to a team, a production team. You know, so one of our producers might be really interested in doing a comedy piece, and another producer might be really interested in doing like a love story drama. So we sort of distribute them out. And then we bring in the writer. So we get in contact with who wrote the script, and we want to have a meeting with them. We want to talk a bit more about like their perspective, what they see for their story, you know, maybe extra detail about the characters when we want to do casting, and also just how much involvement they want in the whole production process. Some writers might only just want to write and then that's it. They trust the production team to make it. Other writers might want to be there every day of the shoot and providing input. It might be more of a screenplay as opposed to just a script that they want. So we sort of discuss that level of involvement, and we're open to the writer being completely present through the whole process. And we're open to the writer being there just to send in the script and then walk away. We don't mind what level it is, but we love to just bring you in and talk everything out. And then like the sort of process after that is the sort of the typical production process then. So then we just start, you know, storyboarding maybe, or just putting like a rough shot list together. We identify what props, what equipment, locations, cast are we going to need, so we can start satisfying those requirements. If we need props that we don't have, then we start putting up a little budget. We do call outs for casting, and then we start the scheduling process. Once we've done the shoot, say the writer wants to be there on the shoot for the whole production, then, you know, they can have input on what shots they want, the feel of the video, the style that they're after as well. And so we involve the writer through the whole process if that's what they want. And then it goes to the typical editing as well. We give it to our video editors, they work through it. Again, the writer can be there if they want, otherwise we just let the video editors sort of work on it, and then we publish it and it goes out. It goes live on Facebook. We do promos. If it's like a mini web series, we might do a trailer for it. We might do, you know, behind the scenes shoots as well, profiles of casts and characters. But Woroni is a student run body. It's a student run media organization. So like the main things really of any sort of scripted piece that we look for, like I said, is just something that's readily available and something that would be of interest for ANU students. We want things that reach out to ANU students, different perspectives of the student experience, or stories that, you know, are readily available and easily connected to by students, something that they can maybe recognize a part of themselves in the characters, or a moment in a scene, something that stands out to them, and students be like, yes, that's what I want to see. But yeah, that's really what Woroni does. That's its basis. We work at TV for scripted pieces, virtually like a mini production company. That's pretty much our capacity.
Awesome. So I've been asked today to talk about format. So I think I'll just for people who are new to script writing, I'll just briefly go over the actual way to format it, because it's relatively easy, but if you're new to it, it can seem confusing. And it's like got a specific order to it all. So at the top, we have the scene heading, which can also be called the slug line in yellow. And so this will be where you describe whether it's inside or outside, the location, and what time of day. And the actual order of it goes interior or exterior, location, and then day or night. And then after that, we have the action, which is in blue, which tells readers what they can see and hear. Now, this is where you want to try and be as visually descriptive as possible. Because whenever you're reading or writing a script, you always want to remember show, don't tell, as you know, film is a visual medium. After that, we have the pink, which is just the character name in capitals above the dialogue. But then what we have here, oh, sorry, I just made a mistake. What we have like here, where it says continued with Brad, that's what we call an extension. And that's just any technical changes to the dialogue. So when it says continued, that means there's been a split in the dialogue, but character hasn't changed. And then other examples can be there's off-screen, which would be OS, or voiceover, VO. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then after that, I have another example down at the bottom in the green, which is called parentheticals, which is a way a line should be performed. So it's in brackets and all lowercase, and it's just purely a note for the actor more than anything, to let them know how to deliver a line. And then the orange, although it's red in the thing, whatever, is just purely dialogue, and you can play with that how you want, and that's it. Oh, wait, one more thing. With the actions, always ensure that they are in the present tense. Scripts are always in the present tense. It's not a novel, it's a script. So just keep that in mind. And with the layout, you always want it to be in the middle of the page, and you also typically don't write camera shots in a script. That's not usually the script writer's job. That's something the director figures out when they've got the script. And a good way to practice is to use free script writing software, such as Write a Duet, which I find really useful. And Celltext has like a free online subscription, which is very useful. And I use it. Okay, moving on. Matthew kind of went over it, and I'm just going to reiterate the expectations that you should face for a short film or a sketch. And that is, like he said, be honest about budget and time constraints. Like, it's great to have huge, grandiose ideas, but it's not realistic or affordable, usually, within a short 5-minute skit. One thing I would like to say as well is with cliched stories, this is especially for new writers, stray away from the idea of what a cliche is. Because as long as you're being truthful and writing a story from your perspective, it's not going to be cliched. Write what you think. Write what you want. Don't write what you think will be interesting, because then it will be cliched, is what I've got to say. Okay. One more thing, beware of concept-driven stories. That's much harder to tell within a short period of time. Try and keep the core of the film real and practical. And the shorter, the better. Okay, that's all good. Now, onto what a good script from an actor's point of view looks like. So Meryl Streep often says good writing makes acting easy, whereas I like to take it a step further and say clear writing makes acting easier, because I think good writing is subjective and hard to define, and it's silly to say. And so when I say clear writing, I mean be clear with the emotions, relationships, and intentions in the dialogue and the actions. This doesn't need to be clear for the audience if you want to have some sort of deception or mystery, but it is a necessity for actors. Some people disagree with me, and you can disagree with me, and that's fine, but that is my opinion. This doesn't mean you need to write huge paragraphs of character introductions or exposition. You know, you can really have densely written short snippets of sentences that give a lot of information, and I'll show you some examples soon, because you can infer a lot of information with small samples. Now, I'm going to show you a sort of a weaker example, and now this is from a short film I did ages ago, and this is the character introduction. Amelia, 27, Andrew, 28, and Damien, 28, are in a car driving down a dirt road in the countryside. Amelia is in the back in a top and shorts, not wearing any shoes, while reading a book. Andrew is driving and Michael is in the front passenger side with his phone out. Now, I personally consider this quite a weak introduction. There's not a huge amount of information given, and actors will have to work very, very hard to sort of glean information from this, because it's possible, but it's difficult and it's unnecessarily difficult. And like I said before, you want acting to be relatively easy, because if that element is easy, they're going to be delivering a much more powerful and present performance for you to help present your image and what you want to deliver. This is another example. This is from a short comedy skit I did a while ago. Jeff Justice is running a small yoga class. There's a cassette player with calm music playing. I consider this a much stronger introduction and also much more relevant to sort of sketches and skits, because reading that, you already have a very clear image as to who this character is and what he represents. You know, you're playing on stereotypes, which I think is okay within this sort of context, because you don't have a huge amount of time to introduce or expand upon a character. And you're not really going to go that in depth with character either in a 3 to 5 minute sketch or skit. So having this sort of quick, snappy introduction is more than enough. And then, but also on top of that, you're able to flick the switch and play with audience expectations, because at the bottom here, this is on this exact same script where like the character changes and it's unexpected and it's interesting and it's fun. Moving on. Okay, now this is just something I'm putting in for people who kind of want to expand upon character introductions. And this is from my personal favorite TV show, Big Little Lies. I'm just going to read it out loud. 40. A whirlwind of a human being, quakes with good intentions, bright, bossy, and a Herculean talker. She speaks rapid fire, perfect enunciation. Now, I consider this an incredibly strong introduction. It's not stereotypical like the one before, but it gives us clear information on character and the relationship between her and her daughter in this little segment here, highlighted in yellow. And this all makes acting much, much easier, because it gives a person reading that two very important assets. It gives them an idea of how this character presents themselves to the world, which is important for physicalizing them, and it's important to sort of going deeper within and asking questions about why they present themselves in this way and what reasoning for that is. And even if those questions don't get answered, it's still good to be asking them, because that'll give a much more nuanced and meaningful performance. And then this part here in the bottom of yellow, reveal Madeline driving. Her 5-year-old daughter Chloe is in the back of the SUV, glittery, bossy, just like her mother, precocious beyond her years. We get an idea of the relationship between them. I mean, obviously it's a 5-year-old daughter, so there's not going to be a huge amount of conflict or tension, but it's something you can transfer to any sort of relationship. Having a clear idea of what the relationship is will make it much easier for actors to paint the scene and stay true to the writer or the director's vision. And the top part here as well is also just, I think, very relevant to anyone, because it's not a huge amount of wording, but I think it just says so much about what sort of person this is. And that's something that's very important when you're trying to write a short little sketch or skit. Anyway, moving on. So just a summary, strong character introductions infer information that actors can use to deliver most effective performances. And obviously, if the format of a script is either a short film or sketch and you're unable to create in-depth characters, you can rely on stereotypes to quickly deliver a mental image of a character to actors and also the audience. You know, a vegan yoga instructor has certain behaviors that you would attribute towards them, and an actor would most likely change their performance depending on this. And audiences would also quickly see that and already have an idea of who that person is. So it's just kind of a quick way to get people on the same sort of level. Now, I'm just going to quickly talk about working with actors, as I've been asked to. So I think one important thing to remember when you're working with actors is that everyone there is there to do a job, and to treat everyone with the same level of respect and courtesy as you would. Because I've just been on too many sets where actors are either treated sort of condescendingly or sort of just differently. And it's probably not something that was relevant to everyone here, but I think it's important to note just to treat actors with the same amount of respect as you would your cameraman or your assistant director, because we're all in it together to create this work of art or this project. But one thing I think does need to be stated is that actors do in some way have a certain other job. If they have to reach a certain emotional state, I do believe actors kind of do need space and or support to reach that, especially unexperienced actors who've kind of just gotten out of school or they're still studying and they don't fully know the key ways to get there yet. And I think patience is the best way to deal with that, because you'll probably get a very powerful performance if you give them the allowance to do that. Obviously, you can't always help time management, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. In terms of directors and also writers, when you're workshopping your script, I think it's really good to have alone time with actors to go over scripts and see any questions that arise from going over a script and workshopping them. And hopefully you'll come up with new ideas of how things should be delivered by hearing them being delivered by different actors and different people, because we're all going to have different ideas of how things are and how things should be presented. And then one last thing I'll say, and this is more for directors, but I guess you can use it when you're a writer, when you're sort of phrasing things out, is that when you're giving direction to actors, it's kind of very counterintuitive to say, you know, be happy or be sad or be angrier, because that's just more work and more stress for the actor to kind of reach something they might not be able to reach on that day. But if you give them more of an action verb, like you need this person to convince them to do something, or you need to discourage them from doing something, or you need them to work out something between these two people, it gives them a much more clearer idea and a much more definite idea of how to go about this performance and go about this scene. But to do that, you as the writer or the director need a clear idea of what you want to happen.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That was really good.
Thank you.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about just a little bit about dialogue, and then we'll do some activities. So I wanted to talk a bit about effective dialogue, which I think is very similar to, you know, that idea of clear writing. And so first I want to separate voice from dialogue, because I think that's a really important distinction that that sometimes get lost in translation. So voice is how the character expresses himself in all kinds of ways, while dialogue is purely the speech component. So, you know, like he was talking about the parentheses, you know, that's part of the voice, you know, where which is really important with getting the character across. And I think it's really, really important to have a strong character. When you have a strong character, you can create strong dialogue. It's when you have an undeveloped character or a weaker character, it's often revealed through the dialogue, because, you know, writers can find themselves like, oh, I don't know what this person would say here. What would they actually say? And so once you have that really strong character, it becomes easier. And, you know, so I wanted to also reiterate, keep dialogue short, all right? It's really important that you don't monologue or make dialogue really, really long unless there's a specific reason you're doing it. So if you look at your actual writing, and if it's more than like 2 sentences, why? You know, why is it? Or if it's more than a line or 2 lines, why is it that long? You know, is there a purpose for that? And I think it's, if you also consider, again, you know, that show don't tell, don't if you translate that, don't explain so much, you know, but rather move the piece forward by like interactions between people, you know. So the way you can keep dialogue short is by having that interaction and communication between characters. So the interaction serves to make the dialogue more dynamic, more fluid. Keeping it simple helps that, because when you keep it short and simple, it means you can analyze how important that dialogue actually is to the story. So scripts get expanded upon and extrapolated, but when writing, it's really important to only write what's important because they get expanded upon. So that way you can avoid waffle, avoid things that aren't super important. Everything has meaning and the actor can build off that. So when everything has meaning, your reader or your actor or the person viewing, they are also able to get a stronger understanding of who your character is. So your character actually becomes stronger and your reader's understanding of them becomes stronger as well. So a really good hint when you're starting off is to make sure no one talks like anyone else, which seems a bit extreme at first, but even just little things, they make a huge difference. So in English, there's so many similes, there's so many different ways to say things, you know. Even if you notice in general conversation, if you start actually analyzing, people have their own different patterns, you know, their own tone of voice. They have words they use more often, words they don't understand, so they avoid them, you know. So people do speak differently, and I think that's really important to try and express in the dialogue you're using. So you can make each character unique and interesting just through the way they speak and what they're saying. So when you're doing that, it's so important to have that really strong character, and the way you do that is you think about it a lot in your head. You know, it's hard to create a strong character just out of nowhere. So you have to imagine them, their history, their wants, their desires, their weaknesses and strengths. And, you know, once you know lots about them, it's easier to put them into a situation and understand what they do, you know. And it's also important to, your character has these wants and desires, you know, these really base level kind of instincts or who they are as a person, but try and avoid the character saying exactly what they think. People rarely say exactly what they think. You know, they often skirt around the issue or hesitate, and I think ums and hesitation are so common in everyday speech, and once they are in a script, they can have a huge impact, you know, because you can gain more of an understanding. The actor can gain more of an understanding on how they're supposed to say something. I think the issue is not to overuse them, and that's when it becomes important again to keep it short, simple, and dynamic. So you're always moving forward, you're always interacting between the characters. So you say one thing, person B says another thing, person A says the next thing, so there's constant interaction, and that way, yeah, that was basically all I wanted to say. So just a quick overview: keep it short, dynamic, avoid monologues, and develop that really clear character, because that way you know what they're going to say, and you can say it in as short words as possible in a really unique way. I think that's very important. So I thought that I would just reiterate the workshop exercises that we're going to do, and then we potentially stop recording and then decide what we're going to go from there. So for the people who didn't make it, who are at home, okay, so we had 4 different exercises. All right, the first one, so the idea is that you'll hopefully use the same scene and just rework it each time, so you can get to really know the characters and get to really develop your skills. However, completely understand if it doesn't work, and you just want to and do a different scene each time. So the first activity we were going to do was to write a story with only dialogue, so only the characters talking back and forth. Try and avoid description in any way. The second one was to reverse it. So tell a scene without any dialogue. Try and, using descriptions, actions, try and avoid thought if you can, but you can include that, but just no dialogue. Third activity, hopefully it would be the same scene again, was to change the pace of the scene. So, you know, if you're having something in a coffee shop, someone getting their coffee, all right, they order and they take away, all right, make it either really, really fast paced or slow it down, make it really longer. Try and see if you can do that, but still stick to a kind of word limit, or to stick to a cinema length. See how your word choices can change that. Workshop activity 4. So hopefully again, the same story, or even just the same characters, put them in a different setting, and how does that change their dialogue? What do they say then? You know, so some ideas of some story prompts or like scene changes was quarantine, you know, if someone was meeting a friend for coffee, you know, how does that change now that it's over Zoom? Let's say detective at a crime scene, you know, it could be a first date, you've just been fired from a job, a lecture or a tutorial. Try and use the same characters, but see how it goes. So those are the activities for people at home. We might stop recording. Thanks for listening if you do.